We're diving into some familiar territory this time, huh? The nativity story.
A tale for the ages, you could say.
Right, but we're going way beyond the manger scene with this one.
Deeper than usual.
Oh yeah, this is where the Urantia Book perspective really shakes things up.
It definitely challenges some traditional views.
To say the least. Okay, so right off the bat, the Urantia Book says Earth wasn't just some randomly chosen backdrop for this whole event.
No, it was very intentional.
Deliberate. Like they put some serious thought into choosing Earth as the place.
Like a team of cosmic event planners, right? The Urantia Book actually uses the term family commission.
Okay, now that's a term I haven't heard before.
Basically, a group of 12 celestial beings.
Wow, 12 of them.
Tasked with finding the perfect family for, well, you know.
For the birth of Jesus.
Exactly. Can you imagine reviewing countless lineages, spiritual capacities, genetic predispositions? They weren't messing around.
That's some serious vetting.
Yeah.
So what made Joseph and Mary the ultimate finalists?
Well, according to the book, they had this ideal combination, like their ancestry.
Yeah, that always gets me. Most folks picture Mary's family tree as, very traditionally Jewish.
Right. But the book paints a much more, shall we say, colorful picture.
Definitely colorful. Give us the rundown.
Well, it suggests influences from all over. Syriac, Hittite, even Egyptian ancestry. It really makes you think about Jesus's message later on, right? All that emphasis on inclusivity.
Wow, talk about a diverse background. Okay, now on to Joseph. The classic image is the humble carpenter, but the Urantia Book presents a more nuanced perspective, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Way more than just a carpenter. I mean, he was obviously skilled with his hands, but also a very capable guy. He eventually becomes a successful contractor.
Really?
Yeah, so that image of them being, perpetually poor
Right.
might need a little adjusting, according to the book at least.
Fascinating. And his family tree. Talk about a history lesson.
Oh, you go way back with Joseph. His lineage goes all the way back to Abraham.
Wow.
Then branches out Sumerian ancestors, even connects to Andon and Fonta.
Andon and Fonta.
They were these pivotal figures way back, helped humanity develop language and culture.
So like way, way back.
Way back. And Joseph's family tree ties right in.
It's mind-boggling when you think about it. All these connections. And then you have Joseph and Mary. Two totally distinct personalities.
Yeah, that's one thing the Urantia Book does really well. It highlights their individuality.
It does. Paints them as real people,
Right, like Joseph, he was thoughtful, introspective.
The quiet, contemplative type.
Yeah, definitely. And Mary, she had this cheerful, optimistic energy.
A force of positivity.
Exactly. You can almost see how their personalities would have shaped Jesus, can't you?
I know. It's fascinating to consider. Speaking of fascinating, we've got John the Baptist waiting in the wings.
Mm-hmm.
He brings a whole other layer to this, doesn't he?
He does. And it's easy to forget these weren't just figures in a story. They had real lives, real relationships. Like, did you know John the Baptist's parents and Mary's family? They were related.
No way, really?
Yeah, distant relatives, but still, it's like this cosmic family reunion.
I love that. And Elizabeth's story, wow.
Talk about a life-changing moment. Gabriel appearing to her like that. Imagine being told you're going to have a baby at her age, and that this baby will be the forerunner to, well...
To Jesus.
Yeah.
It's mind-blowing. And the fact that Mary went to visit her, both of them pregnant with these incredible sons, I bet those conversations were something else. One thing that always strikes me about Gabriel's message to Mary is it wasn't just a birth announcement. It was like a vision statement.
Totally. Like, here's the game plan.
Exactly. He lays out Jesus's purpose to bring the kingdom of heaven on earth and among men. Those were his words, right?
Direct quote from the book.
Man. And just think about what everyone else was expecting back then, especially in Judea.
Oh, they were ready for a political revolution. New king, overthrow the Romans, all that.
But that wasn't Jesus's mission, was it?
Not at all. Gabriel's talking about something way bigger. Internal transformation. Love, compassion, forgiveness as the foundation of life itself. Radical stuff.
And to wrap their heads around it all, to grasp that their son would be both fully human and divine, must have been a lot to process.
That had to be a wild ride internally, trying to reconcile all that.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, before we get too far ahead, I've got to ask about the Son of David lineage. It's so central to the Christmas story we all know.
And it's a great example of how the Urantia Book challenges assumptions.
Because most people assume Joseph was a direct descendant of King David, which would make Jesus the heir.
Exactly. But the Urantia Book throws a curveball and says, nope, It was through adoption, like way back six
Oh.
generations before. Joseph's line connects to David's through adoption, not blood.
So not a direct descendant at all. In fact, the book actually says Mary had a stronger Davidic bloodline than Joseph did.
Yeah.
And that's where things get really interesting.
Right, because the Urantia Book's perspective is that so many of these Old Testament prophecies, the Messiah coming from David and all that, were misinterpreted. It wasn't until after Jesus' life that people really started making those connections.
We're trying to make the story fit, in a way.
Exactly, like the whole "a virgin shall bear a son"
Well,
prophecy.
The original said maiden, not virgin.
A subtle word change, but huge theological implications. And there are a lot of examples like that. The Urantia Book is really big on context, you know?
It urges you to dig deeper, understand the how and the why of those interpretations.
It does. And speaking of digging deeper, let's go back to Bethlehem. Mary and Joseph's journey there. The book's count is pretty powerful.
Imagine making that journey. No cars, no trains, just a very pregnant Mary.
On their single donkey, no less.
It really puts things into perspective. And then they get to Bethlehem, and it's not exactly a welcoming committee, is it?
No room at the inn. I mean, we've all heard it, but the Urantia Book really drives home how crowded, how chaotic it must have been.
And they end up in a stable, basically.
Grain storage room, to be precise. Not exactly the Ritz.
But that's where it happened. Jesus was born in the humblest of settings. And yet,
As the Urantia Book makes clear, it was still a miracle. Jesus' birth was like any other human birth in many ways, but also completely extraordinary.
it's amazing how the book balances those two ideas. Speaking of extraordinary, we can't forget about the priests from Ur. They traveled so far, guided by a dream.
Seeking the light of life, they knew it was coming, they just didn't know where. They even went to Herod, which, knowing Herod,
Oh, that had to go well.
let's just say Herod was not a fan of prophecies about a newborn king. But anyway, these priests, they didn't see any Star of Bethlehem on their journey, did they?
That's what's so interesting, right? Because the Urantia book says the Star of Bethlehem, as beautiful as it is, was more of a later addition to the story. Probably inspired by that rare conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn.
A little astronomical embellishment.
Exactly. It makes you wonder how much of history is like that. But we also have to talk about the darker side of the story. I mean, Herod's paranoia had devastating consequences.
Absolutely. His fear and ruthlessness led to a horrific tragedy, the massacre of the innocents.
When he ordered the execution of all those babies in Bethlehem. It's chilling.
Heartbreaking, and a stark reminder of the very real danger Jesus and his family faced right from the start.
It's a heavy thought to carry, especially during this time of year.
It is. And it makes you wonder, how did Joseph and Mary escape with Jesus? What happened next?
Well, for that, you'll have to join us for part 2 of our deep dive. So last we left off, Joseph and Mary had just experienced the miracle of Jesus' birth amidst, let's just say, less than ideal circumstances.
Yeah, talk about an eventful trip to Bethlehem, and then to face that kind of danger, fleeing for your lives with a newborn.
It really makes you appreciate the gravity of their situation, doesn't it? The Urantia book doesn't sugarcoat it.
No, it definitely doesn't. According to the book, they received a tip from someone within Herod's own court.
Wow, talk about divine intervention, someone on the inside looking out for them.
It makes you wonder who that person was, right? What motivated them to risk their own safety to warn Joseph and Mary?
The book doesn't say, does it?
Well, it's one of those tantalizing details that's left to our imagination. But anyway, they got the warning just in time. Imagine the scramble to pack up, gather their things in the dead of night.
With a newborn baby. I can't even imagine the stress, the fear.
And knowing Herod, they couldn't exactly take any chances. They had to move quickly, quietly.
And their destination, according to the Urantia book, was...
Egypt. Alexandria, to be precise.
Wow, Egypt. That's a long way from Bethlehem.
It was a journey into the unknown,
Yeah.
for sure. They didn't know anyone there, didn't speak the language. They were completely reliant on their faith to guide them.
And on each other.
Absolutely. It must have been terrifying, exhilarating, heartbreaking all at the same time, leaving their home, their families, everything they knew behind. But they did it to protect Jesus.
Because they knew he was destined for something greater.
Exactly. It's a powerful reminder that even amidst the most extraordinary circumstances, life goes on. There's still laundry to be done, meals to be cooked, babies to be cared for, even when you're facing cosmic stakes.
And speaking of cosmic stakes, I wanted to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the whole son of David lineage.
Right, right. It's one of those details that often gets overlooked or misinterpreted.
Because the Urantia book is pretty clear on the fact that Joseph's connection to King David was through adoption, not blood.
6 generations back, no less. It's like a genealogical footnote that got